My wife is filing for divorce because her friends like being with rich men, and she wants to try that life. But now that she's looking to return, I tell her we don't need her with the kids. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, 42, and I, 44, moved for her new job. She had been offered a senior management position at a company she had applied to, without my knowledge. The reason she did it was because she knew I would never agree to move. We had been together for 12 years, married for 10, and have 8-year-old twins. Both families are here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, it has been very difficult for our family because my father's health has not been good, and we always fear the moment we might lose him. Naturally, as his only child, I want to be here for him, and for my mother as well. Therefore, I didn't want to move. After my father's diagnosis, I thought Emma would understand what I was going through, but instead, she told me I was being overly sensitive and that I couldn't continue to turn down out-of-state job opportunities and expect her to do the same just because my father was sick. Before my father got sick, in fact, we had been planning to move because she wanted a change of pace. But after my father's diagnosis, I told her it would no longer be possible for me. She tried to understand at first, but gradually, over the last year or so, she began to feel very restless, and we had been fighting about it quite a bit. She wanted to move because she felt stuck here, and I couldn't think of moving while my father was in such a condition, especially since it would also mean leaving my mother to deal with everything alone. Even if I had had siblings, I couldn't have left because my conscience wouldn't have allowed it. I tried to explain this to Emma, but she refused to see my point of view, and I felt she was being selfish, while she felt I was the selfish one. Then, earlier this year, one day, she came home from work and told me she had applied for a well-paying position at a company out of state and got the job. That surprised me, and I wanted to be happy for her, but I just couldn't because she hadn't told me anything about this application or this job. I was kind of in shock, so I just congratulated her and didn't say anything that day. I remember we had an argument because she didn't think I was happy enough for her, even though it was a big deal. I have to admit it was a good job with decent pay. However, it bothered me that she hadn't even thought about talking to me about it before applying. She told me she didn't even think she'd get the job, but now that she had it, she was thinking about moving and wanted me to go with her. She wanted to relocate our entire family, knowing how I felt about this, so we ended up fighting about it, and it was one of our worst fights. It got so bad that she ended up going to stay with her parents for a couple of days, and we had no contact during those days. I actually thought she was going to file for divorce and end it, but then she came back home, and we ended up deciding we were going to try to work things out between us because we still had the kids and couldn't let them down. At the time, I thought it could still work with her because I didn't want to leave this marriage. I was sure I loved her, and she told me she loved me too, so I wanted to make it work. But I also didn't want to give up on her dreams. So, after much discussion, we decided that she would take the job and I would stay here. She told me she would try to travel back and forth as often as possible so we could make this work. We had no choice but to opt for a long-distance marriage for now, as neither of us was ready to give up on the other. It was hard for me to accept, but I had to, at least for a while, until we could decide what we wanted to do in the future. Then she left and started coming home every other weekend. Even then, she could only spend 2 days with us and take a return flight on Sunday afternoons, as she had to be back for work on Mondays. It was exhausting for her, and she knew it. But there was nothing she could do, as she had agreed to this arrangement. Over time, I guess she began to resent me, and her attitude toward me worsened. We had promised each other we would try to make this work, but every time I tried to call her during the week, she was always so mean to me, and we ended up arguing about something. It got to the point where it seemed like she didn't even want to talk to me. Instead of calling her myself, I started waiting for her to call me first, and then we started talking less and less. Even when we did talk, it was always very cold and weird, and I didn't know what to think about it. Finally, after being away for almost 4 months, she came home one weekend, bringing divorce papers with her. At that point, things were really tense between us. She told me she couldn't take it anymore when she came back that weekend. We hadn't spoken for almost 6 days straight because of the argument we had the last time we spoke. I wanted to find a reason not to get a divorce, but I couldn't think of anything because the last fight we had was when she actually floated the idea of separating and ending the marriage for good. I should have seen this coming for months. Not only had we been fighting, but she'd also been getting close to a friend from high school. This friend, let's call her Melissa, wasn't a nice person and was an even worse influence. Emma had always been good friends with Melissa, and that woman had even been a bridesmaid at our wedding. But I'd never liked her because she always gave off a strange vibe. From what I knew about her, she was a total gold digger, always going after rich married men so she wouldn't have to commit to them, but still get the benefits of being with a rich man. She even bragged about it as if what she did wasn't detestable enough. When I used to mention her behavior to Emma, she would tell me it was her personal choice and that we shouldn't judge her. That was quite irritating, so I eventually stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore the friendship altogether. Eventually it got easier because after Melissa moved away and Emma got busy with work and the kids, they grew apart a bit anyway. I knew Melissa had also been living in the same state with her son for a couple of years, having moved away after her second divorce, probably to find new prey. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in the same state, she contacted Melissa, who was the one who introduced her to the city and helped her move and all that. I hoped that maybe Melissa had toned down after so many years, but she was still the same strange person. I wasn't comfortable with Emma being so close to Melissa again, but she was the only friend Emma had there, so I couldn't even say anything about it. In the months Emma had been there, she had told me that Melissa had been very supportive of her since she was alone, and that she had even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This group of people Melissa had introduced Emma to was quite strange because, as I recall, it was a group of 3 or 4 women who were all single mothers. They met through Facebook and had a kind of support group on the platform. According to what Emma had told me, these women had been with men, had children with them, but for various reasons. Their partners had abandoned them, and now they were raising their children alone. The only support they received was alimony. However, it wasn't as sad as it sounds because most of the women Melissa got along with were like her. They had gone after very rich men, had affairs with them, got pregnant, and then, when these men decided to stay with their wives and families, these women managed to get large alimony payments. This sustained their lifestyle. In reality, it wasn't just support for them. It was also payment to keep their mouths shut, since I assume these men didn't want their affairs to reach their wives. It was very common for all of them to have some online business that no one was really interested in, but they were self-employed and wanted people to believe they were doing it all on their own. In reality, they were running a scam and proudly called themselves independent women, who had all the freedom in the world to live by their own rules, while living off the money of men who were foolish enough to fall into their traps. Emma found it funny, but I found it disgusting, and I didn't think it was a good idea for her to socialize with them. However, she continued to defend her friends and told me that she had met them personally and that they were all really nice women. Since we were already fighting about so many things, I didn't want to fight about that too, so I didn't say anything. But then, in the last argument we had before she filed for divorce, she told me she really admired Melissa's strength because even without any man's help, she was raising her 2 children brilliantly on her own. I ended the call dismissively and told her that anyone who made that much money by getting pregnant after an affair with rich men was probably taking good care of the children, since they weren't her children, but a lottery ticket to them. That led to a huge fight between us. Frustration had been building for months, and that day, that tiny disagreement was enough to trigger both of our anger. We started cursing each other out, telling each other exactly how much we hated the situation, and we just blamed each other. At one point, she said that if we were going to fight like this all the time, it was probably best for us to go our separate ways, and then she hung up. I thought she didn't mean it and would call me to apologize, but that never happened. I was also very upset with her, so I didn't bother contacting her either. That weekend, she showed up with the divorce papers, and I decided to go through with it because I couldn't find a reason to stay with her either. We had tried to make it work, but unfortunately we weren't successful. Even the children, for whom we were supposedly together, hardly ever saw us together, and when we were together, we weren't happy. So, rather than let them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to get a divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple, as there is no waiting period in our state, and we only had to divide our joint assets, which was fairly straightforward. I kept the house and the children since she didn't want to take them with her at this time, and she said that for now, we could continue with the arrangement of her coming back here every week to see them, We'd been sharing the cost of raising them anyway, so we continued. Once they were a little older, we would let them decide what they wanted to do. It wasn't convenient for either of us, but we didn't want to fight over custody, as we believed our children deserved both of us in their lives. As for the house, we had a verbal agreement that we would put it up for sale in a few years, and when it sold, we would split the money. The divorce was finalized about a month ago, and I didn't think she would want to talk to me after that because, even while we were in the process of getting divorced, we barely had anything to talk about outside of meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything was finalized, I was trying to cope. Although it seemed like nothing had really changed, since we were still following the same routine, life was definitely going to be quite different for me now that I was no longer married to Emma. My children were also very confused about what was going on, so I had to explain to them that their mother and I were no longer together. Although nothing had exactly changed, she decided to call me again last night so we could work things out between us and give the relationship another chance. Apparently, she had made a huge mistake and wanted to reverse the divorce. I could tell she had been crying and was quite hysterical on the call. She began to rant about how she had unintentionally idealized the lifestyle that Melissa and her friends led. Because of that group, she hadn't mentioned it to me before because she knew how I felt about Melissa. But after our last fight, she had talked to her group of friends and they told her to go for a divorce. Initially, she had been skeptical, but they convinced her. Then she spoke to a lawyer who had been recommended to her. But it's been a month since then, and she's tried literally everything to move on, like dating apps, blind dates, and going out almost every night, but she's only ended up having casual encounters. This has only made her feel pathetic because, at least with me, even when we were fighting, she knew she loved me and I loved her. Now she's really lonely. And more than anything, she also misses the kids. Her friends told her this would pass, but she hasn't been able to shake the loneliness and guilt after the divorce. Plus, her company had been doing pretty well when she joined, but she's had several pay cuts since then. Apparently, they had exaggerated how well they were doing to get her into the company, and her current income doesn't match what she was initially offered. Not only her, everyone at the company has been through the same thing. They keep telling people that things will get better if they keep working hard, but she thinks it's just to retain employees. That's another reason why she wants me back. She said she really wanted me to consider reversing the divorce decision because she just misses her family and what her life used to be like. But after she finished talking and explaining her situation to me, I felt furious with her because I couldn't believe she had allowed her immoral friends to convince her to get a divorce. I had always warned her about Melissa and made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after moving away. But she never paid attention to me, and now they had turned out to be the reason she ended up making the decision she did. If it had been her mistake, I might have been understanding, but the fact that she had chosen to listen to people I hated really bothered me. The nerve of her calling me and starting to cry about all this stuff, as if it had all been so easy for me, just infuriated me. I ended up exploding at her and telling her she had to deal with it on her own now because I wasn't going to help her. Despite everything, I tried to do everything I could to make this marriage work. I'm not just talking about the last few months, but since my father got sick, I fought tirelessly for our marriage, and for a while, so did she. But she had been incredibly selfish over the past few years, and that's how we ended up here, divorced. The least she could have done while I was away was try to understand my feelings and my situation. Instead, she got carried away by friends she knew I didn't like. I told her I wasn't a teenager anymore and that a juvenile excuse, being influenced by her friends to make bad decisions, wasn't going to work on me. She wasn't just coming home drunk with her parents. This was a very different situation, and it had affected my life and even the children. Now, just because it's uncomfortable for her, she wants to reverse the divorce. First of all, of course, that's not how it works. And second, even if it did, I wouldn't do it. I was really upset by everything she had said to me just before that. I just couldn't help myself. So I told her that if she was really feeling alone and guilty, then she should ask her friends for help. I'm sure that if they were the ones who encouraged her to file for divorce, they would care enough to help her if she wasn't doing well financially, but also to support her emotionally. I was also really bothered by the fact that she had basically confessed that she had been having casual encounters with random people for the last month after our divorce. Technically, I was single, so I could do whatever I wanted, but it made me feel really uncomfortable and depressed because I felt like I had devalued what we shared for the past 12 years. So I told her I didn't want her back in my life, especially after the things she had just said to me, and that I was going to make sure the kids stayed with me because I wasn't sure if she was a good influence on them. She started crying even more and told me she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. But I told her I had made a decision and had to live with her, and that the kids and I didn't need her anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my in-laws. They were telling me I shouldn't have said the things I said because she was already really depressed and that it wasn't nice of me to kick her when she was down. They said it wasn't necessary because she was already regretting everything she'd done, and it seemed like I was trying to punish her further by telling her the kids and I didn't need her. I wouldn't have cared what my in-laws said, but they've been very kind to me after the divorce. So, I don't know. I'm the bad guy for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back, and that the kids and I don't need her anymore. Update 1. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown me in the comments. I don't know how to express it, but it really means a lot to me to know that so many people are on my side in this situation. It means even more to me that so many of you have related to my story and have reached out to tell me things will get better. That's very kind of you, and I know things will get better. It's been 4 days since I posted, and I blocked Emma after our conversation, so she hasn't been able to contact me. This weekend, she's supposed to come see the kids and spend some time with them, so I don't know what's going to happen then. For the past few months, since the divorce was finalized, she's only picked up the kids from my house and gone to her parents' house to spend the weekend with them, occasionally spending some time here with the 4 of us for family activities. But for the most part, she tried to stay away from me, and I was okay with that because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, however, is uncertain. I'm actually kind of worried about having to see her because her parents have been really upset with me, and they've told me that the things I said to them were so harsh that she's ended up crying every time they've called her since. Haven't responded to any of their messages because I really don't know what to say to them, but I feel a little bad because I know. Emma is a very unemotional person, and I managed to touch her in a painful place because she's been crying so much. Even though she hasn't exactly been kind to me and our circumstances haven't been the best, I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life. I feel like she messed everything up on her own. I did my best to make it work, but it's not like I could make the marriage work on my own without any help from her. I don't know what to say, to be honest. Update 2, Emma came over yesterday to pick up the kids, and we ended up having a conversation about everything that had been said. It was obvious from her appearance that she was going through a very difficult time. It showed on her face, and I found it very difficult to be cold to her. She asked if I would be willing to talk to her, even if just for a little while, and I ended up agreeing. Once the kids were in their room, we started talking. She told me she was truly sorry for everything, and not just referring to the recent months, but the past few years. It had taken her a long time to realize how selfish she had ultimately been, and she even said she didn't deserve to be with me. She explained that in the last few weeks after the divorce, every time she went out on a date or met up with a man, all she could think about was how unsure if this was the life she wanted for herself. She felt guilty for throwing it all away. She had idealized him, but he wasn't as great as she thought he would be. By the time she realized this, it was too late because she had already lost me. As she spoke, she started crying again, and I tried to comfort her, but she said it would only make her feel worse because it only made her realize what kind of person I was and how badly she had treated me. It was bittersweet hearing her say these things about me because I really would have appreciated it when we were together, but now I'm not sure what to do with it. Anyway, after a while, she told me she decided to quit her job and move back here to be closer to her family. She also wanted to spend more time with the kids because she'd already missed out on so much time with them. It wasn't worth staying away for so little money and sacrificing so much. The only request she had for me was that I not file for full custody, as she'd said she could. I told her not to worry. She'd said it in the heat of the moment, but she had no intention of actually doing it, because both she and I had always taken good care of our children. She knew they missed their mother, so spending more time with her would definitely do them good, and I would support her. After we finished talking, she apologized again and told me he was a good man. She also promised me she'd try to be a better mother and a better person, and thanked me for letting her talk to me after everything that had happened, instead of just slamming the door in her face. I was a little touched by that, but I didn't say anything, and then she left with the kids. So that was that. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. I thought she was going to come and fight with me, but this was nice and unexpected. She's apologized, and I'm not going to say I forgive her and that it's all in the past, but at least we're on the right path now. I don't think I can go back to her. That seems unrealistic after everything that's happened. But the least we can do is try to raise our children the best way we can and make it as peaceful as possible for them. And of course, it'll be better for us, too. Now, let's see what the future holds. Update 3. Well, it's been 4 months since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma has kept her word. Within a few weeks, she quit her job and moved back here. Since then, our children have been splitting their time between the two. They spend half the week at my house and the other half with their mother, and so far it's been quite convenient for them. Emma was initially with her parents, but found an apartment a few blocks away. The children are having a lot of fun with their 2 homes now. As for my former in-laws, we're back on normal terms. We don't talk regularly, but they apologized for upsetting me when Emma was going through her breakdown. They told me it wasn't my fault, but as her parents, they were really stressed and ended up blaming me as a reflex. Emma and I are also back on good terms. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're cordial and have kept things civil. I'm also slowly moving forward and trying to process everything that's happened. So far, it's going well, and I'm hopeful it will continue to improve. Update 4. It's been almost 7 months since my divorce, and I wanted to share a significant update. A couple of months ago, I met someone and we started dating. She's a single mother, and her children are close in age to mine, which I think can be quite good. It's been good to be dating again, and I feel good in this relationship. My children, for their part, I think will be incredibly supportive. They've often told me it would be fine if I started dating someone, that I didn't have to be alone. Because of this, I've been seriously considering introducing them to my new girlfriend, as I think they'll handle it well and it will be a positive transition for everyone. They might even get along with my girlfriend's children. However, this update isn't just about that. It's also about something that happened with Emma. A few days ago, when Emma came to pick up the kids, she asked me to sit down and talk. I thought she wanted to discuss something related to the kids, so I agreed. We sat in the living room while the kids were upstairs finishing up their things. To my surprise, Emma told me it had been a long time since our divorce and that, now that we're getting along, she'd like to go on a date to see how things are going. She explained that since she moved back to the city, she hadn't been out with anyone and hadn't been in contact with Melissa or her other friends. For her, it would be a chance to see how she feels and if we could rekindle what we had. It was a little awkward from what I said at first, and I didn't know how to tell her, but I finally told her I'd already met someone and was even thinking about introducing her to our kids. Although we're both in a better place and getting along, I don't think it's a good idea to try a relationship again. Emma took it in stride and appreciated me being honest with her, even though she knew she was feeling a little hurt by all of this. But the thing is, even if I hadn't met someone, I still maintain that giving the relationship a chance is a bad idea. Update 5. I wanted to give you a quick update on how things are going. First, regarding my father, since many of you have been asking, he continues to struggle with his health issues, but I'm relieved to say he's slowly improving. It's been a long and complicated process, but he's a fighter, and his improvement has given us all a little hope. As for my personal life, I recently introduced my children to my new girlfriend. I was a little nervous at first, but I'm very happy to say they received her quite well. They seem to get along with her, and that has been a huge relief to me. Knowing that my children are comfortable and happy with this new dynamic gives me a lot of peace of mind. Also, I recently had the opportunity to meet my girlfriend's children. We decided to have a barbecue at my house so everyone could spend some time together in a relaxed atmosphere. It was an incredible day. The children got along very well, playing and laughing as if they had known each other forever. I'm very happy with how things are progressing, both in my personal life and with my father's health. I am very grateful for everyone's support and well wishes.